This storm definitely overachieved in a lot of areas. Looking at the latest snowfall totals from the last 24 hours from the National Weather Service, here is your snowfall legend. Those areas highlighted in yellow here, down here towards St. Louis, yes, they picked up 6 inches of snow for them, as well as into Springfield. But once you swung into Indianapolis, another 6 inches of snow, a little bit of lighter amounts as you further south into Louisville, back into Frankfort. But yes, even more, couple of inches down here into Cincinnati, and then higher amounts once you got into Ohio with another 6 to 8 inch swath. But once you got into Pennsylvania, wow, those snowfall totals definitely increased in the overnight hours. There was a thin, narrow swath that went through Pittsburgh and especially into Harrisburg here, Allentown, Hellertown. Yes, some of those areas picked up 3, 4, and yet one report 5 inches of snow in just 1 hour. It was just cranking right along this boundary, this frontogenesis setup. And we had some areas actually ended up with a foot of snow, and even some reporting a little bit higher than that. So that is starting to wind down, but there looks to be possibly even a bigger snowfall event setting up for Friday, heading into your Saturday time frame. So I appreciate all my subscribers out there. This channel is up to 240,000 subscribers. I appreciate each and every one of you. I'm here on a daily basis giving you daily breakdowns to keep you well ahead of the storm. So if you are new, hit the subscribe button and follow along so I can definitely keep you well ahead of the storm. So here's your latest setup right now. So that, like I mentioned, the snowfall is starting to wind down in a lot of those areas across the Northeast. Look at all the instability and how far south the jet stream is. That's pretty far south. We do have a stronger cold front that's moving through the US, and that's dropping those temperatures down in a big way. But it's also having the only instability is down well south down there into Brownsville, but really going to be elongated there in Florida, where they're definitely expected to pick up some heavier rains. But then all eyes will be trending out west as we have the beginning stages of a series of atmospheric river events that will pummel that area with very heavy rainfall over the next 4 to 5 days. But here's your temperatures heading into Sunday morning. I think this is when things start to kind of bottom out as that cold air reaches all the way down into the deep south. So those freezing temperatures actually reach all the way down into the San Antonio region, even along the Gulf Coast. So there's a lot of areas across the country are going to be hit with that colder air mass, as it's still winter, folks. So we're going to be starting to delve into the forecast. But first, a word from my sponsor. Are you fed up with constant annoyance of spam calls to the extent that you've stopped answering your phone just altogether? I can relate. I was getting bombarded with over 20 phone calls a day. So here's a list of all the blocked phone numbers on my phone. The culprit: data brokers collecting and selling your personal information from your address to your phone number. But fear not, because I found the solution. Aura, the proud sponsor of today's video. This handy app is a game changer, offering comprehensive suite of features from credit monitoring to secure VPN, from browsing, and even an encrypted vault for your passwords. Aura is an all-in-one solution. They take the initiative on your behalf to put in the effort to remove all your personal data from the vast reaches of the internet. See, this is my encrypted vault. I've got 14 items in there, and here's a list of all my activity of some of the data brokers that have been removed from my personal information off the internet. Experience convenience of Aura's identity theft protection and privacy features, and all in one place. No need to juggle multiple apps. It's that easy. I challenge you to try it out for 2 weeks. Click on the link in the description below, aura.com/pal, and enjoy a free 2-week trial absolutely free. If you're likely as impressed as I am, you'll likely want to continue using it. Click the link in the description, try Aura for 2 weeks, and join me thanking Aura for sponsoring today's video. Now go ahead and get protected. So let's take a look at the forecast over the next 48 hours. So there was that colder air highlighted across the middle of the country. We've got a dominant ridge of high pressure. That's a colder high, and that suppresses the jet stream further south. So really the only instability is there into the Rio Grande Valley, but especially there into Florida. And they got the Daytona 500 race trying to unfold tomorrow. That's going to be hard pressed because they're expecting 2 to 4 inches of heavier rainfall within that region. But notice how dry it is across a good part of the country. But all the instability is out west into the Pacific Northwest, but especially into California. This is just over the next 48 hours. We are expecting more heavy rain to a lot of areas that got inundated with heavier rains just over the last couple of weeks. They'll be getting a lot more. So definitely concerning with more flooding events and landslides and mudslides across that region as we go into the next couple of days. And I don't think it actually ends there because we have that low just kind of sitting there, right? It's the longer it just kind of sits there, it spins out spokes of energy on the southern flank. I think once we get into Monday afternoon into Tuesday timeframe, those areas across central and southern California will be starting to get hit hard with that heavier rain. And really, it's just them. It doesn't really go into portions of Arizona or Utah. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the heavier precipitation is really just confined to those areas in California. So you tend to dry out for a good part of the country, and all the moisture is just really highlighted across the West Coast, because by the time we head into that Tuesday, Wednesday timeframe, yeah, the southwest winds really start to kick in, and that is a warm wind, folks. A lot of these areas are experiencing, 15 to 20, if not almost 25 degrees above average. There's that trough just still sitting out there in Florida, and that will be moving off to the east here. But yeah, the only instability is really right on the outskirts of California back into Florida. And as the ridge will be suppressing all the precipitation across a good part of the lower 48, we do still have some colder air that's still going to be bottled up into southern portions of Canada there. And that's the instability that will be dropping from the northwest flow that will be setting up the snowstorm going into that Friday, Saturday time frame. So before that, we've got a lot of heavier rains out there in the Pacific. So we've got just this atmospheric river event. You've got the El Nino driven subtropical jet stream. And then you've got pulses of energy pulling in, lifting northeast. And this is exactly what happened last week with, the week before that, with all the heavier rain that got inundated in a lot of these same areas. That low pressure center tends to kind of stall out, and the longer it stalls, that just sends waves and waves of heavier rains. So definitely concerned about the southern flank of California getting those flooding rains and the excessive rainfall back into that Monday and Tuesday timeframe, and it probably doesn't end until sometime on Wednesday. And there's the ridge of high pressure, really elongated across a good part of the country. That's going to be the dominant feature for most of your work week, as a lot of those areas are going to experience some spring fever in the air, with warmer air pulling into a good part of the lower 48. But we do have colder air lurking, and that it is going to be building up there into Canada. And that's the piece of energy that will be starting to trend southeast from the northwest flow as we head into your Thursday time frame up there into the Great Lakes, because we got this little vorticity starting to drop southbound once we head into that Thursday time frame. So we got the split flow, right? So we've got this kind of split flow setup. You got the subtropical jet to the south, the southern tier of the jet stream, and then you also have the northern branch, right? So you got that split flow. And this low pressure center will be diving southeast. And the further it digs, the colder air it's going to bring, but it also likely could end up somewhere around the Kentucky region and then to the northeast. And then those areas to those northeastern areas, that would be the favorite area of all the heavier snows will likely unfold. And one of the things that you look at is the vertical velocity, the upward rising motion air. And it's really right where you see those darker colors, where we have the most vertical lift up in the atmosphere. You got to have the air to rise, and the heat ahead of the system is actually going to be fueling all the heavier precipitation in the upper levels of the atmosphere. So once you got that cold air draining in, that is going to have a lot of higher water content values with it by that time frame, and that is going to be able to wring out that snow starting into those areas across the Great Lakes, especially starting into the Wisconsin region, back into Michigan here, as that low pressure center will start to kind of get its act together. You got the southern flank that will be mainly a rain producer, but then you got the northern flank as that 540 line drops further south, and that's the piece of energy on that northern flank that we're going to be talking about, all the heavier snows that will likely unfold as this low pressure continues to dig. So as it digs, I think it's going to be stopping somewhere in the vicinity of Indianapolis, back into Kentucky there. You're likely going to be on the southern flank, to the tail end of the beginning stages of what could set up to be some pretty significant snows as we head into that Friday, Saturday, and winding down on Sunday time frame for all those areas who cross portions of the Ohio Valley into the mid-Atlantic, but especially into the Northeast, as this low pressure center could somewhat stall once it gets offshore off the East Coast. And obviously that would bring an increasing snowfall amounts. So if we look at the overall ensembles, the ensemble guidance has it a little bit faster than what some of the regular runs bring it is right now with that low pressure, but it's still bringing that southern flank right on the tail end of the Kentucky region. So these are the areas of southeastern Kentucky and into portions of Ohio here, back into Virginia, but especially as we head into Pennsylvania, across DC, those areas in Maryland, into Delaware, into New Jersey, back into upstate New York again. And I think this will eventually swing off and really deepen and amplify once it gets into that Friday night time frame, as that low pressure center, there it is, that right there in that tail end of Kentucky there, back into Ohio with likely more heavy snows. And then we're going to be setting up a low pressure center somewhere in the vicinity off the Delaware coast here. And that's going to be significant because the longer it stays offshore, that's going to be bringing in all that moisture off the Atlantic there and wrapping around. And we've got colder air coming in from that northwest flow, and that is going to be wrapping into that low pressure center. It's going to be winding up our snowstorm heading into your Saturday time frame, because if this unfolds, this could likely set up a pretty significant snowstorm as this jet stream really starts to dip. We've got this other ridge of high pressure will allow this blocking mechanism to start setting up. So if this does come to fruition, yes, that would be a formidable low pressure center right off the coast there, and that would be blocking this system to kind of stall and not moving anywhere too soon. And that would add into those higher snowfall totals and what they saw last night, when you get the perfect setup of those 2, 3, 4 inch per hour snowfall rates. Those can really add up in a very, very short amount of time. So so with that low pressure center hanging off the coast, we've got some higher probabilities of some heavier snows that would likely unfold across Delaware, into New Jersey, into eastern portions of Pennsylvania, back into New York City, into Massachusetts. Rhode Island picked up 10 inches of snow from that last event, not the one last night, but the last event prior to that. They look to be in a similar bullseye again, with more significant totals, and those totals could creep up in the foot range, and some of those areas heading into Massachusetts, into Connecticut, but especially as you head up into their Vermont and into Maine, it could really start to unload as we head into that Saturday night time frame. So we'll be fine tuning this setup, but right now, it definitely appears that we could be looking at a pretty significant snowfall event as we head into that Friday, Saturday, and starting to wind down on your Sunday morning time frame. And that's exactly what the Climate Prediction Center has highlighted right now, right within that time frame. And I think it originates into your Thursday night, Friday time frame across the Great Lakes. And then the more significant snows, I think this would likely even be pulled back a little bit here. And then the higher snowfall totals will be really elongated within this region that's highlighted up here into the Northeast, into New England. So this looks to be a pretty formidable event. But for the rest of the country, you can see it's really coast to coast, right? We've got the series of atmospheric river events that's going to be unfolding across the West Coast that could likely bring 4, 6, maybe 8 inches of heavier rainfall over the course of the next 5 to 6 days for the West Coast. But notice the dry slot across the Southeast, the Southwest regions, and to the middle of the country. Just not much going on, right? It's really elongated on that southern flank there into deep south of Texas, but especially into Florida. It gets clocked with those heavier rainfall totals of 2 to 4 inches. But this is between now and that Thursday night, Friday morning time frame. Most of the country is fairly dry besides California and Florida. And then we'll be watching that system coming in on late Thursday night, heading into Friday morning, especially into Saturday across the Great Lakes, that likely will swing through the Ohio Valley, clipping Kentucky there and swinging into West Virginia, portions of Virginia, and then really amplifying and lifting further as you get northeast. The further northeast you go, the heavier snows would likely be with this snowstorm that will come coming up for next weekend. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch me next update. Why I protect you before and after the storm.